Okay, today we're reacting to 13 Minutes That'll Save You 10 Years of Music Production. This is by the YouTuber Ocean. I have 10 years of audio engineering experience.
Life must be in them crimes, walking all the strong like Samson, harder than ivory. Just be
I don't claim to know everything, but I believe I can add value. So let's get started.
8 harsh lessons that I learned as a music producer the hard way, that's gonna save you so much time so you're not wasting years and you're gonna level up and become a better producer in 2026. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Ocean. I've been producing for 10 years now. I've gone from making beats in my grandma's spare bedroom to working with some of the biggest artists in the UK, getting
Right, we all start somewhere. I remember I started literally on a table. I couldn't even put my feet under. I just set my laptop on there and spent hours there trying to learn.
To now making dance music, playing shows, releasing music and getting support from DJs. So all the lessons I'm about to share with you in this video are from real mistakes that I've made. Things that I've had to learn the hard way. This is no fluff. So back in 2020 when everyone was locked up, I had a lot of time on my hands and I decided to pick up the guitar and try and learn a new instrument. And I'm not gonna lie, in the beginning I was so bad. I found it hard to move my hands in position.
Right, so I've been playing guitar now probably for 13 years, and I remember learning it being super difficult. It's just a lot of practice until you get better at it.
And play chords continuously. But I still really wanted to make beats that had guitar melodies in there. So I'd sit there and
That's some of my favorites too, some of the melodies that are in music with guitars.
just try and play as best as I could to try and get melodies. And I remember this one in particular. I came up with a very cool idea, but I actually couldn't play it in properly. So I literally had to record each chord, each note one by one, and then stick the audio together afterwards. And as you can imagine, it sounded like a mess. I didn't even tune the guitar properly. I was listening back to it.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I believe the Rev from Avenged Sevenfold did this from one of their studio videos where he made A Little Piece of Heaven. I think it was the piano part. He played one individual note at a time.
And so he started playing this thing with one finger and adding another finger.
And then they kind of mushed it together and made it work.
Thinking it sounds cool but it just doesn't sound right, but regardless I'm just going to send it out with all my other melodies as I usually do. And so I sent that week's batch of samples to all my producer friends, and this sample that I made, I sent it to a producer who turned it into a beat, who got it placed with Young Ads, and that song became Press the Button, which now has almost 20 million streams on Spotify. And honestly, that changed how I view my own music.
Yeah, so this is the core of what people are doing with music nowadays, and sampling things, whether your samples come from things you've recorded or things on Splice. They're taking things and making it their own.
Because it made me realize I had to just get rid of perfection. Sure, I could have spent more time tweaking it and polishing it, but just because I feel a certain way about my music doesn't necessarily mean that someone else who's listening to it is going to have that same perspective or that same feeling.
Right, this perfectionist mindset will be a killer for people. It's something I had to work on very, very hard. It's a hard thing to overcome because you want everything to sound just right.
What I might think is terrible, other people might think this is gold, this is treasure. And so sometimes
Correct.
having that perfectionist mindset and waiting for it to be 100% the way you see it, you might actually just be getting in your own way. Honestly, if I held onto that song,
Yeah, as I was about to say, if you hold on to it too much, it kind of crumbles in your hand. It's best to make the idea and just keep going, move on to the next thing.
this opportunity may never have happened. So sometimes you just got to let go and trust what you make. And this kind of leads on to something that I see all the time with producers. So I recently had a call with one of my mentees. He's a super talented producer. He's got all the perfect technique down when it comes to making melodies. He knows his chord progressions, his keys, his scales, and honestly his ideas are amazing. But when we had a look at his workflow, he was barely finishing anything. He told me that he's locked in, he makes tracks every day, but once he makes that 8-bar loop or that 4-bar loop, it kind of just stays there and it doesn't get finished. So out of the 100 ideas,
the infamous 8-bar loop, when you have to develop a full song and make your variations and actually make structure to music. I think that's something a lot of people, most people deal with in making
that he
music.
makes maybe only one track is finished. That's a 1% track finish rate. I know this is a common thing too. You open up your door, you make a cool melody, it sounds good, but then the next day you open up a blank canvas again and you don't actually finish what you started. And it feels like you're...
I think about 5 years ago, there was a point in time where I just had projects and projects and projects of tracks, and they may have been just even ideas. I think the best thing to do in that case is actually spend time being like, hey, I'm just going to make ideas, and have a folder just for ideas and set aside time for that. And then you have your other times when you're actually making full on tracks.
Working. But the truth is, nothing is getting finished, which means nothing is leaving your laptop. And that's a huge problem. If you're not finishing tracks or at least bouncing out ideas, it's as if you actually have nothing. Because just having those ideas sitting in your door, it's not going to do anything for you. Once you're able to take that 8-bar, arrange it, turn it into a full song and finish the track, now you have something that you can send to DJs, you can play at shows, you can have something that people can listen to and connect with. So now your music's working for you. Or at the very least, you at least have an idea that you can pass off, send to another producer, and they can collaborate on it. So a massive lesson here is that if you stay in this unfinished territory, your music is just not going to do anything for you. Nothing really changes until you start seeing those ideas through. Even if...
Again, it's best to take what you're making, get it out, even if it sounds bad, and then move on to the next thing, because that next thing could be the thing.
It's not exactly where you want it to be yet. So when I first started making...
Or the thing that you think sounds bad could be the thing that everyone likes.
Dance music almost 2 years ago now. I thought at the time I had it figured out. At that point, I had been producing for about 8 years. So in my head, I was like, of course, I know how to make music. I know how to make beats. I'm just going to take everything that I've learned from making trap and drill beats, and I'm just going to pour it into house music. And so I'd build those tracks exactly the same way, with the same structure. I'll start with melodies, add in a few drums, structure it to last 2 minutes, maybe 3, until it sounded right. Then I started sending those tracks to DJs, and nothing was happening. I was getting no downloads, and nobody playing it in their sets. This was happening for at least the first 6 months. And
I'm guessing this comes down to structure and what he has for DJs to mix into.
And I just couldn't figure out why. I thought the ideas were good, but it wasn't until someone told me straight, the actual track, it sounds good, but the structure of it, I just can't play it out. It's very difficult to mix. You're not starting on the drums. It starts with too much melody. So when I'm trying to phrase out from one track into the other one, it's too difficult.
Right. So when DJs are mixing into 2 separate tracks, they need to have something that they can transition to easily. And so this can be a hard thing to do in a way, because you need to have your music easily mixable, and you just don't want to have like 8 bars of drums. It's a hard line to follow.
So then I realized straight away I needed to fix the arrangement, and so I started listening to a bunch of tracks and referencing exactly how it was done. I would take a track, drag it into my DAW, and analyze it properly. How do they start? Where's the drops coming in? How long's the intro? And once I did that, things started working. So if you're new to production, or even if you've been doing it for many, many years, a great way to level up your production really fast is to use reference tracks. It stops you from guessing and to...
So he's talking about like templating other songs in a sense, and you got to be careful with that. I mean, the thing is great for producers who are learning and they want to be able to build music. The thing is, though, is that you can get stuck into that mind frame, and then you could fall into that trap of making all your songs do that, and then you'll kind of get burnt out of what you're making in that sense. It's more so take it so you know the rules, so you can bend them.
Be able to look at a blueprint and see what's actually working. Now, the important thing here is you don't need to copy the track, but we're just using it literally as a reference to try and understand why it works, and then we can apply those same rules into our own productions. And this ties into another big lesson that I learned. Back when I was doing studio sessions, before I'd even pull up to the studio, I'd make sure that I had a bunch of beats that the artist can run through. In my head, I felt like I knew which ones were the best. Obviously, my favorite ones. The ones that...
Yeah, the ones you put a lot of time into, a lot of effort. I see what he was gonna... it's going to be the ones that are the simplest, that he didn't put a lot of time into, that was really quick one-off ideas.
I spent loads of time on adding in the layers, adding in the detail, the ear candy. And so, of course, in the session, I'd pull those up first. And most of the time, the artist would just skip them, and then I'd pull up a beat that I made quickly, something simple, nothing crazy going on, something that I probably made in like 10-15 minutes. And I kid you not, they would always say, yep, this is the one, let's run with this. And this wasn't just a...
Right. So there's some creative processes happening here. So when you have an artist who's in a creative space trying to come up with creative ideas, that something is clicking with the fact that your track was made very quick and you were in a creative mindset and the ideas just came out. And so when you have an artist who's trying to get in that same space, I think what's happening is that there's clicking going on between that. And so the ones that you put a lot of time and effort and it's all thought out, it's almost like too thought out in a sense. Very interesting creative talk.
Wonderful chorus. This kept on happening constantly. And so I really had to look into it. After going back to them, taking them in again, I started to realize that there was a clear difference. The ones that I spent a lot of time working on, they were usually overcooked. Too many sounds, too much going on, not enough space for the artist to do their own thing. The ones that they picked,
there's a time and place for full-on production for maybe your own personal stuff. If you don't have a singer or rapper in there, there's definitely a time and place.
They were simple, they were clean, loads of space for them to rap or sing on top of it. And that's when it clicked to me that a lot of times, less is more. It's not necessarily always about adding more sounds and adding more plugins. A lot of the times you'll find that if you take things away and simplify it, you can actually make it sound way better by creating space, but also giving space to the sounds that already exist and not trying to overdo it and show off all your production skills in one track. And this, of course, is something case by case. It's not going to be for every single beat, but it's just something to keep in mind when you're cooking up next time. So now you finish up a track, and then what? Be honest. For most producers, this is where it ends. It gets exported, maybe listened to a couple of times, maybe sent out to a few friends, but it doesn't really make it beyond that. And then it sits on the laptop, it sits on the hard drive amongst the folder with another 50 tracks that you've made. And the truth is, it may as well not even exist, because music doesn't do anything for you if it's
doesn't do anything if it just sits in a vacuum and basically let the world see it.
Sitting on your laptop. It doesn't get you opportunities. It's not building your name. It's not getting any reach. I heard a quote a long time ago and it's always stuck with me. I think it's by Rick Rubin. I cannot fully remember, but it goes something like, we make music for ourselves, but once we make the music, it no longer belongs to us. That's for the world. So once you finish up a track, honestly, it's time to let it go. It's time to send it out, send it to DJs, send it to...
Art is meant to be seen. Art is meant to be seen for other people and the world, and it's up to them to have the work and make their own opinion about it and how they view it. That's the beautiful thing about art.
Labels, maybe even other producers to play in their sets. Post it, test it in real environments. Just have a plan for where your music is going to go. I know a lot of producers avoid this because it can be a little bit nerve-wracking, uncomfortable to potentially face rejection. And honestly, that's not...
Right, that's because you're making music and you're being vulnerable, coming up with ideas, but that's the great part about music. So overcoming that and just letting the music talk for itself.
Normal. Maybe some people won't.
And some people aren't going to like it. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it.
Even care about it. That's just part of the game. But if it never leaves your laptop, nothing really happens with it. But if you share it, you're at least giving yourself a chance. Now this next one, it nearly finished me. Back in 2023, my goal was to get placements with artists, and I went all in. I was completely obsessed by this goal. I was doing a ton of studio sessions, as much as I could, sometimes even twice a day if I could fit it in. And it got to the point where I decided to actually move and live in my studio. I had a sofa bed at the back. At night after I finished a session, I'll just flip that out, go to sleep, wake up the next morning and just run the whole thing again. Then on the weekends, I'd go home to just wash my clothes. And to be honest, I didn't really have much of a life outside the studio. My life was the studio. At the time, I was in the mind frame of this is what it takes. But by the end of the year,
Right, so you have pros and cons with this. Pros being that you will learn a lot, you'll build connections this way. The cons of it being that you're going to be burnt out. But the thing is that spending all that laser focus time on production music, it will absolutely just destroy your creativity after a certain point. And so what you need to do is actually spend time in life doing things and putting that creative process into something else that will help you. Even if it's just getting out and going out for a walk or spending time with your friends and other creative thinkers to build and experience life so you have things to put into music, because isn't that what music is? It's just an experience of things that we've had that we're expressing into songs and tracks and ideas.
Was as you can imagine, completely burnt out. And now with hindsight, looking back, even though I was putting in a lot of hours every single day, it wasn't really super productive in the end. I learned so much from taking all those sessions, but realistically, I wasn't working effectively. More hours doesn't necessarily equal better results. I've been there thinking that if you just put in more and more time, more sessions, more late nights, that's what it takes. And to be honest, there is a little bit of truth in that. Something is going to click. But at the same time, moving at that rate, what's going to happen is you're eventually going to burn out.
Yeah, I think everyone needs to go through one of those in their life, especially if you're learning. Like, you need to be obsessed with it and to the point that you hate it, and then adjusting to that dynamic so you know not what to do. It was the case for me, and I think it's the case for a lot of people. But you need to learn how to operate and learn when to step back so you can come back and take a good look with fresh eyes at your music production and the way that you go about certain things.
Let's think of creativity as your phone battery. The more you use your phone, the battery slowly starts to go down until it completely dies. And for us to use the phone again, we've got to plug it in, charge it, so the battery goes back up again. But what
it dies and gets destroyed, completely ruins the phone after a while. Take care of your mental health.
We keep on redlining. Eventually, you run the risk of crashing and burning, which is what I did. The music started sounding flat and it just wasn't exciting anymore. And this can lead you into a very dangerous cycle. Redlining is so hard that you fall out of love with it. You end up taking a break, whether that's for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, even years, and then come back to it. It causes inconsistency. You come back to it, build the momentum again, crash, and the cycle just repeats itself. But if you think about it, even athletes don't move like that. They're not in the gym every single second of the day. They have their time in the gym, then they have their time for recovery, and then recovery is just as important.
Very good analogy there.
That's the gym. That recovery time allows them to come back sharper. And it's the same thing with music. That rest period allows us to come back fresh. Honestly, some of the best ideas that I've had haven't come from necessarily sitting in front of my door and trying to force it. They've come from when I'm doing other things, whether that's cooking, in the shower, maybe going for a walk. Time away from actively making music. So,
right. Living life.
I'm not saying do not work hard. Definitely work hard, but what I'm saying is if you're not giving yourself enough space to rest and reset, you're not actually helping your creativity. So give yourself some grace. If there's nothing left to give, feel free to take a rest and come back to it fresh another time. And this last one is probably the most important, maybe even a little bit too deep for YouTube. But a few years ago, I was a podcast junkie. I always had one on in the background, no matter what I was doing, just trying to find some sort of life-changing advice or gem that I thought I was missing. And I remember one specifically with Pharrell Williams, and I think the question that was asked to him was, what's the key to success? And he simply replied, just believe in yourself. Now at the time, I'm not gonna lie, I thought this was so basic, so generic, like low-key, maybe even a bit of a cop-out. But the older that I've got, the more mature that I've become over the years, the more that I truly believe that this is so important. When you truly start to believe in yourself, knowing that it's all gonna work out.
I never liked the phrase believe in yourself because of the belief system aspect of this and kind of the inward looking. We should be more outward looking and looking up for our belief. But I think the better thing to take from what he's getting at, because I understand where he's going with this, is to not believe those negative thoughts in your head and not to make up reasons why you can't do something.
For you, whatever that goal may be, your perception on things really starts to change. You start to naturally take actions that move you towards your goal. And as you start taking these steps, momentum starts to build, doors start to open in ways that you probably couldn't have even imagined in the beginning. But on the reverse, when belief isn't there, it starts to show up in small ways. Maybe you start hesitating a bit more than you should, not shooting your shot when you had the chance, not taking opportunities, telling yourself, you know what, I'll do that later, and you start to procrastinate. And all this starts to hold you back. There's this really famous saying which goes something like, the person who says he can and the person who says he can't, they're both right. We can all come up with excuses all day. I don't have the plugins or the VSTs or the money to make really good music. I live in a city where nothing is happening. I don't.
Right. So my belief is in the belief of a higher power, which in my case is God, and going to him to ask me what to do for my actions, but also not believing on those negative thoughts and those things that are trying to influence me to go a different direction, and then asking him for that guidance to make the directions, because I believe self-belief will lead us in directions that may look good, but that can ultimately be bad for us. So that's why I take the view of saying that I get what he's saying, but we'll frame it in the sense that to stop making excuses and not believing the negative thoughts that we tell ourselves for our creative
Have the
work.
connections, I don't have the networks, And to be honest, I'm sure that you're not wrong, but the difference is, what are we going to do with that? Are you going to let those things hold you back, or are you going to see them as advantages that help move you forward? And that's where I think real belief actually comes in. And it's more than just saying, oh, I believe in myself. It's really truly feeling it. At the end of the day, they can be two people in the same situations with the same limitations, but the difference where one moves forward and one stays exactly where they are is going to come down to their self-belief. This one is a little bit of a deep one. By the way, if you're a producer,
I think the building of resilience, and that's the end of the video. But yeah, that was 13 minutes. That'll save you 10 years of music production. I really like the creative discussion on this and having the ideas to go back and forth on of what he was saying. This was a YouTuber named Ocean. I really like his content. Maybe I'll do some more reactions to his stuff in the future. Really good talk. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.